Okay, hello and welcome to Tidy Tea Time. Today we are going to be talking about should people be grateful for having a job? Today with me, my colleagues Pooja, Soumya, Kiran. Hello everyone.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
hello.
Okay, so in the most cliche way possible, I'm going to start this debate, which is with a quote. And the quote is: there's been a systemic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy. This is from, have you guys heard this before?
Must be like
Yeah.
a Donald Trump kind of quote.
Where, but it's not, because this is from Tim Garner, who's the CEO of the Australian real estate company, where he said that the COVID pandemic has basically changed people's work ethic so much that they got used to, getting paid a lot to do very little, that they need to be put in their place through at least a 50 to 60% unemployment rate. Respond.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's that's cool.
Thoughts?
I mean, I don't know where his macroeconomic kind of calculations come from, because if that's the case, then the economy and the world is tanking, and
Mm,
then even he's not making much money.
yeah. I
So
mean, he's in real estate. How will people buy homes? Forget about everything else.
exactly. So
Yeah.
maybe he needs to get a little bit of a lesson on economics before
Yeah.
he said.
Well, uh, I mean, again, of course, he has, walked that quote back. He's apologized and said, that was very insensitive of me, and I didn't consider the repercussions on, life and family and all of that of unemployment. But it does kind of bring us to this, to why we're discussing this today, right? Are we at this juncture where there are a lot of expectations that employees have from their employers? So the question is it valid? Is it fair? Are employees behaving like entitled brats? Are they asking for too much? Is it a long time coming? um or should things just go back to the way things were, and should employees just be grateful for what they have today rather than asking for more? Right, that's kind of the whole range of what we're going to be discussing today. I want initial thoughts from every one of you, so who wants to go first?
I saw Pooja unmuting herself first.
Go for it.
I don't know if um it's the same thing, like being grateful, and also like today I'm working for Tidy. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow and etc. etc. Tomorrow I wake up and I say I want something more. I want, for whatever reasons, I want more money, I want more stability, I want work life, whatever reason. I would imagine that it would be, I mean, as much as even tomorrow when I feel like I want all of those things, I'm still going to be grateful for where I have come so far with the organization that I've been working for. And the company also is appreciative of my the value that I have brought into the organization as a person, not just for the work that I'm doing for the company, but so being grateful and also trying to like climb up that ladder for yourself. I don't know how much those two things are um, correlated, or
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
that yeah.
No, that's a fair way of looking at it. Like it's, but I guess it's also, grateful to the extent of putting your personal needs on the back burner. I think there's that scenario versus, a scenario where you say that, I'm getting XYZ benefits from this company,
Mm,
and therefore I'm just grateful and I will not ask for any more because there are
mm,
so many. For example, just going back to the early 2023, Q1 and Q2 of 2023 saw a massive number of layoffs, right? We're talking about all your big giants, your Google, Amazon, Meta, Salesforce, even. all of them laid off thousands and thousands of people in Q1 and Q2. Of course, now, I mean, if you go to layoffs.fyi, which basically focuses on tech layoffs primarily, you see that it's kind of evening out. Like it's stopped. It's not as bad as it was in the first 2 quarters, but it kind of brought to the fore that, is it an employer's market, or is it still an employee's market the way it was right after the pandemic, right? So I think that's where, that gratefulness comes from.
I think we have the opportunity maybe right now more because things are probably tilting more towards the employee side of things, but it's not like uh, uh, it's not like these kind of things weren't happening before, right? Our entire idea of 5-day work week came because employees were dissatisfied at some point and needed to stand up for themselves. So I think gratitude has its place. I am probably grateful for having a job that pays my bills, but I can also have parts of my work where I'm not happy about. Gratitude does not mean that I take everything that comes my way, good or bad, right? I can be grateful for my work and I can still stand up for things that I think isn't working for me. If I
Yeah.
want to go in and renegotiate my salary, that does not mean that I'm not grateful for my work. That just means that I'm standing up for something that I think can probably make me more grateful for my work, right? So it does not have to be one or the other.
Yeah. So the way I'm reading what you're saying is it's about, writing. It's maybe rewriting the way the relationship is framed, right? The employee-employer relationship. Is that something that, we're working towards today?
I think we've got a better platform to work towards that right now, given probably the fact that, should I say, the power is slightly tilted towards the employee side of things. Maybe we have that platform and opportunity more now than we did before.
Right. And Kiran?
Um, I think it's a give and take relationship, right? I mean, the employer is expecting something, the employee is expected to deliver on that, and therefore the employer gives the employee something back. I think what happens during downturns and during market corrections or any of that is there's a little bit of correction that happens. The market corrects, share prices correct, but at the same time your workplace also corrects.
Hmm.
When every money flowing and no one cares about the next day, then there's a lot of heady sort of hiring and a lot of good things happening. But when there's a correction, you start looking really into who is performing and who's not. And at the end of the day, those who are not performing will be the first ones who have to go,
Hmm.
right? So from that perspective, if you think about quiet quitting and all of those topics that we've discussed in the past through some of our episodes, um, you will hear a lot less about quiet quitting now,
Yeah.
because
No, because you're hearing about loud quitting.
I have no idea what that is, but
Yes,
okay.
maybe something like that.
Okay. But the problem is, because if you're not pulling your weight, then that relationship is imbalanced
Hmm.
from that perspective. So I think it's not about being grateful. I think it's a very capitalistic relationship.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, I think that's pretty much what the workplace is. It is a capitalistic workplace in 99% of the places. Most nonprofits as well are governed by capitalistic sort of signals and means. So I think everywhere it's just about that. If you're making money and you're helping me make money, I'm your best friend. If you're not helping me make money, then we have a problem in our relationship. So from that perspective, I don't know if it's about being grateful. Um, I think anyone who lets their guard down and does not continue to perform is in potentially the chopping block, so to say,
Hmm. Hmm.
from an employee perspective.
Yeah. But sorry.
True. But that, I mean, I my thought there is that I feel like that is one perspective. That is, when you go to a workplace, you tend to feel that it's a very transactional relationship. I completely agree with your point. But when you're bringing it down to the humanness of it and gratefulness when it comes to us as people going to work every day, it's like, I may just creating that kind of, especially as a leader, to be able to bring about a culture that allows each individual to have their work to be a safe space for them, and to be able to, as I feel like as people, as humans, we tend to hold on to negative a lot more than we hold on to the positive things. Like that,
Yeah.
there's the thing called loss aversion, right, in behavioral economics. So we can come to work every day and we can be irritated with our colleague for asking too many questions, or irritated with our managers for micromanaging. But then where gratefulness comes in would probably be, you're allowed to be irritated or you're allowed to be pissed, but tomorrow if I'm having trouble with my manager, being able to bridge that gap before, like going up to your, being able to just go up to your manager and say that I'm having trouble here, like that kind of a space or environment is something that also needs to be cultivated in
Yeah.
Yeah,
organizations from a
absolutely. And
human.
I think
I
that's got the whole culture within the organization,
Yeah,
right? But that does not
yeah,
take away from the basic
yeah,
relationship between an employer and an employee. We want to give the best workplace. 8, 10 years ago, everyone thought that was a foosball table tennis in the office, and lots of bean bags. Few years ago, maybe about 4, 5 years ago, there were companies in India, for example, who were giving away bikes and super bikes for people who joined, um, which is ridiculous. That's not sustainable, right? And unfortunately, I think today, if you look at any industry, there is a need for people, but really good people. The problem is, in most economies, you have a lot of mediocre skills available, and this is just calling a spade, right? Let's look at it even from maybe an employer perspective. It's very, very tough to get really good candidates for whatever role that you're looking at. You'll get okay candidates, but if you want to go from 1x to 5x of whatever your metrics are, you can't do it with okay people. And so in that case, I think that's where the fight for good employees start from an employer perspective. That's why you have these crazy incentives being given, crazy bonuses, crazy joining bonuses, whatever it may be. But if you look at your steady state, which is every day, if you're not delivering to the company what the company expects you to deliver, then yeah, you are going to potentially be on the chopping block very, very soon, right? Especially when the economy turns.
Yeah, but I feel like that's again, it's a skills question, it's a qualifications question, it's a capability question, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, then are you saying that employees should be grateful and they should perform, and only then they should stick around and they should be
They shouldn't
grateful?
be grateful. Not
Hmm?
grateful. They should not be grateful for having a job, but they shouldn't take it
For
easy
granted.
either.
Hmm.
Right. They can't take it for granted either, right? And
Yeah.
fundamentally, I think that's what happened in 2022, and to a large extent 21 as well. There were a lot of companies hiring a ton. We've talked about the layoffs in another episode of ours, where your Metas and Googles and all were kind of doing layoffs. What was the reason? Because they hired a ton of people, and assuming the economy will continue to grow. But if it doesn't, then what do you do with the extra people that you hired who don't really have a role to play, or at least a critical role to play,
Yeah.
right? And so I think it shouldn't be taken for granted. Not grateful, but it shouldn't be taken for granted.
But also in that case, I mean, it's a data issue that these guys had, right? They did not plan well, or they overestimated what was going to happen. So it's also a planning problem in that case, which causes those, which perhaps cause those layoffs, and amongst other many other things, right? Like you said, they were expecting things to really go a certain way, and then they over hired, and they had to kind of stabilize and unfortunately then lay off people. I want to turn this question around and say, then we're talking about a lot of, like, I love what you said, Pooja, about the the human aspect of it at the end of the day, right? The relationships. And Kiran, what you said about it being transactional, I mean, that makes so much sense. Now, if you combine the two of them together, we're talking about, should, we're talking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators, perhaps. Maybe I can put it like that, right? So the extrinsic is what the company delivers, right? You're talking about starting with the first, which is your paycheck, then a good work environment, a safe place to be, good managers, ability, maybe opportunities for growth, so many things. These are all extrinsic factors. There are the intrinsic, which has to come perhaps from the employee's side, wherein you say, yeah, I'm going to be motivated, I'm going to deliver. It's not about me owing the company anything, but yeah, I'm here to do a job, so I have to do it well. That motivator has to be uh, top of mind for employees, and I think that kind of feeds the entire relationship, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know if anyone else has something to say. I mean, Soumya, Pooja, if you have, please go for it.
I,
Otherwise,
my thing is, I think in a lot of contexts, when we talk about gratitude, we are talking about it from an employer's perspective, where it feels like forced gratitude. You should be grateful that you have a job, and that means you go the extra mile and you do all of these things. I think there's a disbalance on that side of things. When we're talking about gratitude, somewhere it feels like a sense of forced gratitude that employers expect from employees, so that they do the extra. I think it is also in context to what Kiran said in terms of taking your job for granted, or you are staying aware of the fact that you are being productive in it. So, is there that thing that comes in? Because gratitude, when I read stuff about gratitude, it always feels like that to me, like a forced sense of gratitude for your organization.
Hmm. 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 What if we flipped it around and said, should employers be grateful that people want to work in their company? What if we frame it like
yeah,
that?
I think if good people want to work at your company, that is a really really important milestone for you as a company and as a leadership, right? If, again, the reason I qualified by saying good people is because that's probably the biggest problem from a employment and the relationship perspective, right? If you have if you're a growing company and you need middle management, but then you have 300 freshers who are wanting to join you, 300 people straight out of college, that's not really going to help your business goals
Yeah.
from a perspective. But I think also the second point is, and this may be a little bit more controversial, but um, when when I
Very.
used to play tennis professionally, right? um, the killer instinct to go out and just do whatever you have to go win that match, right? Great skills, great capabilities, all of that, but that one thing which in sports is called the killer instinct is not there, right?
Right.
Where you will do whatever it takes to go and win that match, or do whatever it means. If you kind of translate that into the workplace, it's pretty much the kind of same thing when you have someone who really wants to succeed and is doing things beyond what is just written on their JD, and that quiet quitting, for example, right, which is exactly what you need to do. You're just doing it and surviving. Now management very quickly sees those who are going above and beyond, not
Hmm.
because they're forcing you to do it, but in this competitive world, who would you choose? You're going to
Yeah.
choose someone who's going to help you win, right?
Yeah.
Not someone who's going to help you stay in the same place for the next 2 years by doing the same thing over and over again. So I think that's where the relationship again has a little bit of a stress, is that now there are many times, and this is where the controversial part comes, is people expect the employer to take them for what they are,
Hmm.
Mhm.
right? But from an employer perspective, you may not be what they need at this point. And that's why I said it's transactional, right? So you may have been great for the first part of the journey in a company, but you're not someone who makes it for the next growth phase of the company, right? And that's fine. It has nothing to do with you as an individual or the company. It does not reflect badly on either. It's just that there are changing requirements. And so at this point of time, the company might need people who have that so called killer instinct, who's going to go there, get whatever they can at whatever the cost may be in order to meet those corporate goals. That's the tough part. And that's where the
So,
controversial
so
part
do
comes
you
in, because
see?
I can see Soumya like smiling and waiting to say something.
Samya, go for it.
No, I know it sounded all just right in that context that you said it, but for an employee, the layoff does not sound as easy as the entire context in which it happens, right? It does it does leave an impact on that person, right? And to add to that point, I think when you say good employee, Kiran, you kept emphasizing a good employee and the need for a good employee. A good employee isn't like an inherent quality in a person. The moment I'm put into an environment, what I become, whether I become better or whether I become worse, the entire environment in which I am has a huge role to play there as well. So, what does that good employee mean? And don't you think then in that context, the entire work environment also has a role to play in who becomes a good employee?
No, 100%. I think, see, as I said, there are different phases in a company's life cycle as well, just like a human being's life cycle, right? The point is, someone who is really good at in the startup world, who's really good in the 0 to 1 million revenue, you know, part of the journey. That's one of the toughest parts of a startup journey. Someone who's good over there cannot probably do well in a 10 million plus company, because in the 10 million plus revenue company, that means you're setting up processes, you're setting up, a lot of things that need to be done by the book. There's a lot less of what you did in the 0 to 1 sort of phase. So from that perspective, if you think about it, it's not just like, I don't know if you meant workplace, meaning the culture and the office and the people and the management. I think fundamentally at each phase of the journey, those have to change. You cannot have the same sort of workplace that you did in the 0 to 1 when you're in the 10 to 100
No, I
range.
think
It
I
has to
think
fundamentally change.
the point is about also being a company's ability to firstly acknowledge the fact that everything that the company achieves at the end of the day is because of the people who work in that company, right? Everyone, and the more motivated each individual is, the more skilled each individual is, and if each individual employee is working towards the same common vision and goal, then automatically it's more streamlined, you're moving faster in those waters, right? But not every company is able to create that kind of an environment, and it's so important to keep that in mind, right, when we're talking about these layoffs. One is, a lot of these layoffs, they're not absolutely not the employee's fault, right? They're uncalled for completely. It's just bad planning on the part of people who made decisions to hire in a certain way. So that's there, that we have to acknowledge that that happens for sure. And therefore the whole question about, should you be grateful that, oh god, thankfully I have not been laid off, I should just put my head down, do my work, and not make too much noise, not rock the boat too much, because we should be just glad we have a job. So is that the kind of environment that we're in today? I think that's what I'm really curious about. Or is it just that we're in a time of flux, right? Time of flux, everything is a mess, right? Is it a turning point that we are at that's really going to fundamentally change, work and the way people think? You mentioned something earlier about that killer instinct, and I love that, right? Because of course everyone, you need people who have that killer instinct on your team, right? You need at least one or two people like that. But not everyone can have that killer instinct, and not everyone should, because then you're just killing each other, perhaps. And the
Yeah.
other is, maybe there's this whole, we're more and more of us are embracing, a life which has a little less hustle. So is that why we're changing this workplace shift, right? People don't want to hustle as much as they did before, because there was a time where you said, oh God, I'm so grateful to get this paycheck. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep my job. I'm going to work long hours. I'm going to work weekends. I'm going to stay back. I'm going to, ignore my family and, all of those things, and put my health at risk. People did that. It's a fact. It's reality, right? And they almost felt like they didn't have a choice. So that shift in mindset is what I'm actually most excited about today. Agree? Disagree?
Uh, kind of, but I'm on the fence on that a little bit.
Mm,
Um, I think fundamentally because I expect or hope that everyone who comes to work is coming to still give their all. That
mm,
I'm not talking about they have to be in the office from 9 to 9. That is not what it means, right? But if there were two tasks that you need to complete, you complete it when you're supposed to, and maybe show enthusiasm to do more,
mm,
right? Because otherwise I think it's a very one-way street, because you are expecting the employer to keep showing enthusiasm to give you more, but you are not showing that enthusiasm back, right? And I think that's where the kind of struggle happens, because you are now saying, hey, I want this bonus, I want relocation, I want joining, I want a 6 month bonus, I want to pay upgrade every 10 months or every 6 months instead of every 12 months. And if you are not kind of giving back at that same level, then there is an inherent mismatch,
yeah.
right? So that's what I would say. It's not about the hours. It's not about how many days you're at work versus how many holidays you take. None of that. It's about, can you kind of match up in your giving as you expect from the employer?
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the entire productivity discussion that we had, right? So, are we looking at this in terms of the time that an employee is giving? Is it that employees are really not giving as much as they did before? Is that the situation that we are faced with?
No, as I said, it's not about the time at all. It is, for example, if I tell a sales guy, hey, $1 million is your target for the year, and that guy comes in with 950K to $1 million by the end of the year, he's going to get his own target earnings, right? But I would pay more attention to the sales guy who has gone out and maybe opened up a new market and said, I can get an extra 250K without killing myself because I was just smart about it, right?
Yeah.
So I'll now come back with 1.25 million as my revenue for the year. I'm not asking you to kill yourself for it. I'm not asking you to go 9 to 9, travel 7 days a week. None of that. But be smart about it so that you can start contributing more to the company. Then the company will be very happy, contributing more back to you. But if you don't do that and you keep expecting more and more from the company, I think that's where the mismatch happens.
Yeah.
Right. I think in that context, organizations could probably also play a role in helping employees let go of the hustle culture, right? I think a lot of this hustle also happens because of tasks that could probably takes in a lot of time, those emails that we're sending again and again, maybe those calls that we're doing over and over. So I think from that context, organizations can also play a huge role in helping us reduce and get rid of that hustle culture. Probably like Kiran said, if I have to get to smart work, which means probably I'm not you spending 14 hours a day trying to achieve something, I'm just using those 5 hours, but I'm still achieving what I want to without hustling.
Yeah.
I think organizations have a huge role to help me reach that point as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
but that's also
100%.
intrinsic, right? It's also intrinsic. Like we were saying, it has to be both ways, I think. And ultimately, I do feel like it comes down to fairness, right? It was skewed, we have to admit, it was skewed towards the employer for many, many years.
Yep.
Those little, that blip that happened, the 3 years, 2, 3 years in the middle, suddenly it went to the other side. So the pendulum, kind of it swung to the other end, and now we are finding that balance where it has to come from both ends, right?
Yep.
You have to give what you are willing to. Sorry, you have to, yeah, to get exactly. You have to give what you're willing to get, ultimately.
Yeah. 100%. And I think, I think that's where most sort of employer-employee relationships kind of break. Um, and also, I think that's also a big reason why a lot of employees, I'm assuming, misunderstand employers to think that they should be grateful for their job, right? I
Mm.
think there's that misunderstanding, which is not the case in most places, right? So for example, to Soumya's point, if you want to enable people to do more, you need to have the right set of tools, the right set of the right workplace, the right set of colleagues, kind of surrounding each individual so that that individual can do a lot more. Like for example, in people ops, if you go and deploy Tidy, that would be amazing, right? So I think from that perspective, it also is the organizational responsibility to make sure that each individual is at their best possible sort of space from a productivity perspective.
Yeah, great. Now I'm going to wrap up. We're out of time, but I do want one last quick thought from each one of you on what is one of the most fair demands that have come from employees in the last 2 or 3 years. Who wants to go quickly? Quickly.
Interesting.
I have one. I'll go first. Okay. While I give you time to think. I think hybrid work for
Ah,
me, that's, I think, is one of the most fair demands um, to come out of the of all these workplace trends today, because I do find that you don't necessarily do your best work just because you're all in the same building, in the same office together. I think there should be a good mix uh, of both worlds, where you get the flexibility, have the autonomy, and also work in person together, right? That's my take. Anything, you guys?
I think a fair ask that I've heard is fundamentally someone asking for that, you know, ecosystem around them, to what
Hmm.
Soumya said, right? Whether it be the right learning, the right mentors. Also as an organization, I think it's unfair to kind of put
Yeah.
people in and then hope that they're going to figure it out themselves,
Yeah.
right? It usually does not work that way. And so I think a fair ask is to kind of say, hey, if you expect 110% from me, then also give me the ecosystem to be able to do that.
Yeah. Good one. Samya and Pooja? Pooja, I think you had one.
I don't know if I have one anymore. I mean, I like yours, Debbie, but I don't know. I would say just a balance between work and life would be something that I would definitely
Yeah.
demand.
Yeah,
I
for
would
sure.
demand that anywhere I go. Of course, giving my 110%. If we can out a system where I'm still doing my 110% in 5 hours, that's great. And I go back
Yeah.
to doing my other. It's that blender versus splitter thing also you were talking about.
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
I think for me, I'll go with what Debbie said. I think control over one's time, some amount of control over one's time, I think that's important. And I think that's being a fair ask to not have someone else control your time, but to have that ability to decide for yourself. I think that's come with hybrid work, one, for example. And I think that's a really fair ask.
Okay. Great. Awesome. So I think we all have that at Tidy. So we're all very grateful. Let's put it out there. And on that very happy note, we will wrap up this episode of Tidy Tea Time. Thank you to anyone and everyone who's joined in. We'll see you again next time. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye.
Thank
you.
you.